Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Talk Junkies, where tonight's going to be a very interesting night, as it is each and every single week here at the Talk Junkies household. We got Johnny, Jesse in the house. Gentlemen, what's going on?
Yo.
Same old, same old.
Old, same old.
Yeah, just the usual. Watching some football and watching the Chiefs, unfortunately, lose to the Bills. But, you know, it is what it is.
I have a kid. My life's boring now.
Right?
Nothing new.
No joke.
I still a kid. My life's exciting.
Oh, shit. Well, we've been at it. We've been at a couple weeks hiatus. We haven't really been at it the past couple weeks. Just shit happens, life happens, and it is what it is. I've had some podcasts lined up with some people. One with an author, it just didn't work out. Still trying to get him on the show. A lawyer. Still need to hit up another lawyer that said he'd come on towards the end of October. So maybe we have that in line. Talk about all these new IRS agents that are going to be hitting a city near you. But anywho, we're back at it again this week. It's going to be a fun evening. We got a very decorated guest that's going to be joining Talk Junkies. It's been on Talk Junkies multiple times. In light of what's going on in the world today, the war in Ukraine, whatever disease or whatever virus you want to call it, I'm not going to say it because, you know, you can't really say it anymore.
Is this going on YouTube?
No, it's not.
Okay, I didn't know.
It's gone, you know. I mean, maybe it's making its comeback because it's about to be wintertime. Inflation's at an all-time high. We're not in a recession, but if you look at the earnings reports and the job reports, maybe it suggests that we are. There's just a lot of confusing things that are going on in the world right now. And really the only way I think that we can solve this problem, and maybe this isn't really the true way to solve it, but I think that this is a big start, and we've had these conversations with this guest before. It would be a really good start if we went back to the Constitution and we went back to what it is that made America America. And I don't know, it's tough with 330 million people in this country, but there has to be a foundation. And I think the greatest foundation is the Constitution. And there's no better person to bring on to talk about the Constitution. Dan, other people would have it, man, if you read the question or the comments on TikTok, that some of the videos that I've had on you need to download TikTok, man. That way you can read the comments and comment back on them. But it's very interesting because, of course,
you might not be able to leave your house after that point. You'll be having to respond to too many thousands of people trying to, talk to them. But
really, there's that much activity on there.
Well,
apparently, I don't know. I don't have
numbers
TikTok,
again? What are the numbers again?
I mean, anytime we have you on, man, it's guaranteed over a few thousand views. But one, thank you for joining the show, man. How you doing? And while I look at this, you can kind of talk to us about that.
That was a real insincere way to ask that question. Hey, first off, how you doing? But anyway, he's going to ignore you and continue to look at my phone.
I'm
just trying to pull up the numbers.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the numbers. So there's one video. What is this? What is the Second Amendment really? That's at 6,300 views. Our political party's necessary, 3,100 views. Those are the two most recent. And then we have one at 2,100 views with you. And then if I go down, I know there's one at 4,000 views. There's a lot of comments.
There's a decent amount of traffic there.
3,700 views, 7,000 views, 16,000 views, and that's the entirety of it. So you're probably close to like 50 to 70,000 views. So there's quite a bit of comments on there. And you get a good mix of people who agree and people who don't. It's a beautiful thing, and that's what America is.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I sincerely, I should say, do want to know what's going on. What's up with your neck of the woods? Which I feel like with that beard is an accurate description.
Yeah, I actually have some interesting stuff going on. This week, well, actually next week, I'm going to be in D.C. Wednesday, I'm going to D.C. I'm going to be up there for 10 days. Got to go up there
and they just throw rose petals at your feet whenever you show up to DC.
Oh yeah,
right?
they love you in DC.
I mean, just the red carpet just comes out, right? Whenever you show up there.
So, but things have been going real well. Been keeping busy. Been trying to stay up to date on what's happening, and like you said, I'm more and more convinced that the Constitution is the thing that's going to pull us out of all this mess that we're in.
So before we get into the mess and we get into some of the Declaration of Independence and what you're working on and what type of things you're sending out to the people who rule us, if whatever you want to call it, why is the Constitution so important, and why is it the foundation, and how will that achieve it? Damn, I can't even talk tonight. How is that going to take us to the next step of humanity, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, the important thing about the Constitution is okay. This is not something that was handed down by God. This is not Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the 12 or 10 commandments or whatever. It's nothing like that. But what it is it's guys who came together and they were committed to a goal. And they did pray for guidance, and they hoped to have some influence of some divine influence as far as what they were doing, but they were focused, very, very focused on trying to come up with something that had never been done before. So they looked back through history and they looked at all the successes, all the things that had worked from the history, and also all the things that didn't work, why they didn't work, why they did work. And they tried to put together a system of limited government like the world has never seen before. And the good part about that is that as I've said before, if you sit down and read the Constitution as a set of instructions or as a blueprint, then you can see how all the pieces work together, and you can see that it really is something that, if we were to put it into effect, would have a very, very good chance of working extremely well, even with the large population that we have. The problem that we run into is that there's a lot of people who would prefer to be ignorant of a subject and appeal to an outside authority to explain it to them, and then employ that explanation onto our situation. And basically what they do is they just go and they look for old ways of doing things and then try and jam them into this system and make it work. That's how we have the court system that we do. There's nothing American about, there's nothing constitutional about the court system that we have. Nothing. Judges have completely overstepped their authority on every level. There's absolutely no authority within the Constitution or in any kind of American system for a foreign entity like the Bar Association to be dictating who is and is not qualified to be speaking in court. Because I don't know if y'all knew this, but in most courts now, if you're not an attorney, then you can't speak. Right? They can shut you down and tell you that because you're not an attorney, you can't speak.
That's not the case.
I thought that only had to deal if you were representing somebody else that you had to pass the bar.
That's what I thought as well. But I've been confronted with the reality that a judge told me that I could not speak because I was not an attorney.
That's bullshit.
Right, and I was representing myself on a particular case. But the thing is that here's where it gets really interesting, because of what happened with John Marshall, who is an absolute traitor. He ought to be just dug up and dumped in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and just forgotten about, except for the fact that he's a traitor, and make sure everybody knows that. John Marshall came in and made it so that judges basically were outside of and above the law. They were these divine beings who had a better knowledge of the law than everybody else. And basically what he made them into was these entities who float above the rest of us, and they can make decisions in court that have no basis in law. And their authority alone is sufficient to carry that decision. And the only way that you can get around that decision once they make it in court is to appeal to another court. Is to go through the entire process of appealing that decision.
How did he give access or grant these type of powers to judges? Well,
John Marshall was one of the first Chief Justices. He's the longest serving Chief Justice in American history. He I can't remember what year. I think it was 1800 is when he started. In 1803, he made a decision called Marbury versus Madison. If you ever study anything about the law, Marbury versus Madison is always going to come up as this great, big, wonderful decision where John Marshall established judicial review. And the thing is that on every level, as far as America is concerned, as far as our Constitution is concerned, as far as the Revolution and the Declaration of Independence and all of that is concerned, that whole situation was absolutely wrong. Because I'm sure y'all have heard this phrase before, we are a nation of laws, not men. And what that means is that by power of personality or because of my influence, you don't follow me, right? As far as I don't get to make the law just because I can push people around, or because of the position that I've achieved. I don't get to just suddenly dictate like Stalin or Lenin or Hitler. Those were nations of men, right? Those were personalities that were in charge. We had the opportunity to go in that direction with George Washington, and George Washington was like, nope, not going to do it. I fought for all of this stuff. I worked to achieve this. Now we've got it, and I'm going to fulfill my duties as you've asked me to, and then I'm going to step aside. I will not be running for president a third time. I will not accept if you elect me. John Marshall, on the other hand, saw an opportunity when he was made Chief Justice to take a tiny little dispute, bring it into the Supreme Court, make it into this mountain of stuff, and then use that particular case to grab power, basically. When he asserted judicial review, he said that it is the courts and judges who have the authority to determine what the law is. And that absolutely is just idiotic. Because the Constitution has already decided what the law is. The Constitution is the law, right? And the Constitution, as we talked about plenty of times, the Constitution is a contract between us, between the people of the states. The government, federal, state, and local government, are not party to that contract. They are the subject of the contract, and they are subject to the contract. They are our subjects. We rule them, not the other way around. They don't have a say about the government is not the state. You and I are the state. We are the authority that the state runs on. Right? And the government is not a protector of society because society is us again. The society is there government is there to serve those things. And that's the way the Constitution was framed. It's, they were like, okay, well, we need somebody, like if you were going to be looking for a housekeeper, you'd go down the list of things that you needed your housekeeper to do. Okay, I need somebody to come in and cook breakfast. I need somebody to make the beds. I need somebody to wash the laundry. I don't really need anybody to wash the car. I don't, that's outside. I don't need to, right? And I don't need somebody to spank the kids. I'll handle that, right? You make this list of things, and they did that with the Constitution. They said basically, this is what we need the government to do. We need the government to handle those things that are best handled by a centralized authority. But we need to keep that centralized authority small and powerless because centralized authorities tend to increase their authority and increase their power and just spread, which is what we've got. Oh, yeah. And John Marshall and what he did with Marbury versus Madison and the expansion of the power of the Supreme Court, that move right there, that single move right there was probably the biggest thing that has brought us to the situation where we are today.
So has anyone questioned Marbury versus Madison within the 119 years of its existence for something to last that long? And for one, I'd be curious on how it got passed. Because I feel like there has to be some type of voting system for... I mean, I guess it was a court case, and then that court case took precedence via the Supreme Court, and that turns into law, which...
That's why case law is ridiculous.
Right.
That's why
so
references to previous, like... You can't... I mean, yeah, you can cite it as a reference, like, oh, well, in this previous case, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that you can just look at a previous case and say, oh, this is how we did it then, so this is the answer or the ruling for this case is ridiculous.
Yeah,
that shouldn't even be legal.
For sure. And we hit up case law last time you were on, Dan, but my biggest question is, again, on how ridiculous that is. And you see them coming out with, with abortion, the Supreme Court, and what they did, and those types of things, whether you agree with it or not. How has something like this stood for 119 years unquestioned, and why isn't it something that they're not questioning now? Why isn't the Supreme Court going to change that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why has it lasted so long? Why is Marbury Madison?
Mainly from greed on the part of the politicians and power grabbing. They saw that he was able to grab power, and no one stopped him. Thomas Jefferson, to his dying day, he said his biggest regret was that he didn't stomp John Marshall, that he did not actually shut him down and stomp him and remove him from the court, because he was just afraid at that time, because everything was so new, that if he had a big conflict with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Thomas Jefferson was president of the United States at this time. If the president and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court had this big public battle over something, that it might be enough to break the Constitution, because he could see at the time that was a gross overstep, but he didn't think that it was going to be what John Marshall turned it into be. It wasn't just a one-off thing. It wasn't just John Marshall saying, I've resolved this conflict and blah, 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 and now it's done. Let's move on. He used that as a stepping stone to continually increase his power and the power of the court for his own personal gain. I
think right there, like, that is the biggest problem. And Jesse, you bring it up all the time, actually, the whole, like, oh, if an elected official is seen taking a bribe or taking money from anywhere or anything, like, they should be hung and drawn and quartered and all that stuff, like publicly executed, whatever. Like we've talked. I mean, shit, I don't know if I can say this stuff because of YouTube and Spotify.
Yeah. It's not being posted on YouTube, right?
Yeah,
so
whatever.
I said it before that I don't believe in the death penalty for criminal acts unless it's somebody in a position of power abusing it.
Right.
And then I believe in it. And I always reference the judge that I'm not even going to tell that story. Yes.
The point I'm getting at, though, is you talking about John Marshall basically trying to gain more power. And I think that at the core, like, you want to talk about corruption in the government and us not following the Constitution and things like that, are the fact that somehow in society today and in our government in the United States, career politicians are a thing. Mm-hmm. You have politicians and judges and elected officials and just appointed officials and all this stuff who are making money and living a quote-unquote good life, just being in that position, retaining power, gaining more power, making deals, doing whatever they have to do to keep that like it's a job, when at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a job or a career. It should be like a public service.
It should be a burden.
Yeah.
Being in that level of power should be a burden, not something you seek after. It should be a weight on you that's very difficult.
Unnecessary.
But hold on though, real quick. But I think, like,
not self-serving in any instance.
No. I completely agree with a lot of things that you're talking about, but specifically with this case that you're describing, what he did was he allowed the judges to have discretion, and the law is their discretion. So let's say that that's Marbury versus Madison.
But they shouldn't either have.
But then everything becomes wonky.
But hold on, what I'm saying is, imagine if
with it.
let's just paint a picture here. What type of world would we live in if this never happened?
You're judged by a jury of your peers. The judge doesn't need.
So then we
doesn't need discretion.
So that's what I'm saying.
Judged by a jury of your peers is how it should be. That's how it is in the Constitution.
So exactly. So what I'm saying, hold on. What I'm saying specifically is a lot of the problems that we're describing right now, it might be a lot less if Marbury versus Madison was never even implemented. Is all I'm saying is I think is what you're trying to say, Dan.
Right. Exactly. Because I mean, the thing is that that's our judicial system is based on the supreme authority of the jury. The Supreme Court is a jury. It has 9 members. When it was originally formulated, it had 12 members. It was a jury. That's how it was structured, and that's how it was intended to function. It was not intended for these people to be writing these essays on their opinion about something. It's like, no, you deal with the facts of the case, and that's it. What is the case that's been brought before you? And John Marshall was not satisfied with that. That was too much of a limitation on him. And so his ego and his arrogance and his ambition led him to start saying, okay, I need to be more important. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to say that the court doesn't just come up with verdicts and settle cases. No, we're going to have this be far-reaching. We're going to say, okay, now a police officer just needs probable cause to come and arrest you. It's like, well, that's not what the law says. Well, I'm a judge and I say that's what it says. Well, I'm reading the law, Judge. The law does not say that. The law says that they have to have probable cause to get a warrant to then be able to do a legal search.
The guidelines are within the Constitution for the judges to follow, and I think that that's the most easiest and way to go about being a judge. You follow what it is, the Constitution. You don't get to just implement your own feelings.
Well, the Supreme Court has turned into a thing that interprets the Constitution, which isn't even. You can't have something that is part of it's ridiculous for them to be able to legally. Actually, I hate using the word illegal or legal because that has to deal with law, and this doesn't even apply to that. But to invalidly interpret the Constitution, that's not your job. That is not your place. The Constitution is already set in place, and we did not appoint you to say what it does or doesn't mean. And then on top of not appointing you to that, we also didn't say we would follow through with, and you would just be able to make that decision of this in the Constitution means this, and now that's the law of the land. We've made our decision. It's final. Whoa, who said that was okay? That wasn't in the Constitution. We didn't ratify that part of it.
So, Dan, do you think that there's a big issue with hermeneutics? Jesse, I know you bring this up a lot, and with just the cultural gap between 1876 and what it is now in 2020.
1776.
Or whenever, what?
1776.
That's what I said.
You said 1876.
I said 1776.
Negative. We've got it on.
I think I said 17.
Whatever.
I said 1776.
Moving
it's
on.
all good.
Sorry.
Paul, you're my friend, so I'm gonna stay out of this one.
Which means I said 18.
You said 18.
I meant to say it was in my head. It was in my head. 1776. Sorry, I thought that's what I said.
It's only 100 years in humanity. You're really splitting hairs with that.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, you're right. I think I did say 1876.
difference
I'm sorry. I meant to say 1776. Do you think that there's a big problem with hermeneutics in that point, in a cultural gap, when you have that big of a disparity that whenever people do try and interpret the Constitution, it could have meant something then that means something completely different now?
There's only a few things that mean something different. There's only a few places where you would have to go back and really consult history to be able to understand what it says. I mean, the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. There is nothing in there.
That registers with me.
Yeah,
I know all the slang.
I
know all the
understood that.
fucking slang that we have. All that registered perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, that shit's bussin'.
Yeah.
Right?
What?
The thing is,
Isn't that what the kids say these days?
I don't fucking know.
what the Constitution is. I mean, these guys, when the authors of the Constitution got together, they bickered and fought, and they discussed not against each other, but for a purpose. They were all pretty much working in the same direction, trying to achieve a single goal. And these guys were not slouches. These were some of the smartest guys that have ever existed in humanity. They just were of single mind. They had come through this war and fought for something, and their lives were literally on the line on a daily basis.
I'm just trying to make it cut and dry, so people can't say that. Oh, like it was a different time, and we can't apply those rules to what it is now. That's all I'm trying to cover that gap, because whenever you have there is
no gap there. The only thing that's happened is that we have people in this country who have consistently tried to import people who are not of the American mindset to undermine, Americans. Okay, and I'm not talking about recent history. I'm talking about from back in the beginning in the 1800s when they started importing the Irish. And there's nothing. This is not anything against the Irish, because they integrated, and that went against the plan, right? But the idea was, the Irish at that time were considered subhuman, basically, and so it was the intention to import a bunch of Irish and get them off of, the stop being a problem for the English and send them over here and let them be a problem for us, because they never would obey rules, they wouldn't do all this stuff. Well, they came over here and they're like, hey, man, America's pretty cool. I could do this. And they settled right in, right? But the intention was to bring them in here to hopefully undermine and break, that American mentality that was attached to, this limited government idea. And that's been that's the gap right there, is that we've had these constant attacks coming in to try and unseat this mentality, which really is the pinnacle of Western civilization. America is the pinnacle of Western civilization, as far as if you take the evolution of the individual, if you take the evolution of rights and freedoms, America is really and truly the only country, the only government in the history of humanity that was formed by people who were not in power, right? Usually you have governments formed between competing parties who have a chunk of power that they're holding on to, and they negotiate a peace where they come into the government, and then they continue their fighting in the government, right? This was a situation where we had defeated the superpower on the globe, and all of these guys came together and they said, we need to do something that's never been done before, because freedom is important. The rights of men are important. We need to do something to see if we can't make that a ongoing thing right here in America. So we have a unique situation. This is, America is not like any other country on the face of the planet. And every government on the face of the planet is our enemy. There's not a single ally that we have. Every one of them either wants to control us or destroy us. They're not in it to be our friends. They're not in it to help, because if the ideas that are here in America, if the principles that are in the Constitution were actually employed in these other countries, the people who were in power would be out of power. Right?
Absolutely.
The thing that's if you just were to take one thing like the Second Amendment, that is unheard of. And that's why it's been under such vicious attack for so long. The idea of regular people having weapons, having arms that are not regulated by government. They're not employed in the army. They're not employed in this. Well, that would just be like the Wild West. That'd just be like Afghanistan, man, if you had something like that going on. But it's not, because Western civilization has done something with the people that live here, and the principles that we've all grown up with. The principles that make Western civilization. Those things have had an effect where Western people, Western men especially, are a different breed.
The thing with me is, I think, and I completely agree with you, but it's almost funny, the fact that, it's something that you should be taught, is the Constitution, and we've talked about it. I think it should be at a later age. I think it should be at a different grade on what you learn, what the Constitution is. It shouldn't be 6th grade. And it
was like 4th grade.
Yeah,
it was like
for
4th
me,
or 5th grade.
For me, it was like 6th grade.
Yeah, for me, it was 6th grade too. But, and I'm not against learning that at 6th grade. I think it should be taught at multiple stages. But you're talking about
when it really fucking sets in.
Yeah.
You.
Whenever you're a young adult in that young adult mind, 16, 17, 18, I think it should be retaught. You know what I'm saying? Because that's when it's very impactful. But the fact that they teach it to you at a young age, because of course they know you're going to go through those later years and you're going to be worried about other things. And I don't know the whole mindset behind that and why they chose 4th or 6th grade, but it is at a young age. It's not, but it does stick with you. It's something that sticks with you. Not everything that you learn, the preamble and the Declaration of Independence and all those things, a lot depending on who you are. But at least they teach you it. And I think that they have to at this point because the Constitution is the Constitution. But they at least provide you the information to make sure that these things are happening and that the Constitution is what it is. And I think what you just described, Dan, that's the reason why it has lasted so long with all the onslaught and all these people trying to attack it and take it down. But for some reason, it always is like Rocky Balboa in the 10th round, ready just to knock whoever it is out. And no matter how big of a beating that he took, that's the Constitution. It's taking this beating constantly, but it always finds a way to come out on top, in my opinion. Now, in our current state, I don't necessarily agree that the Constitution is working in its entirety to its fullest potential, and it's hanging on a thread. Will it come out on top? You know what I'm saying? And
would anybody, like, and I'm going to ask you this, but this is more like whatever. Like, do you think our founding fathers, if they were to see where the country was and how all the laws were in place and how everything was running, that they would just be like, yeah, good job, guys? You know, or you know, no, they would be no.
Well done. This is what we pictured.
They'd be like, no, this is not anywhere close.
Well, I mean,
what the fuck happened?
But you have to think here. I mean, like for one, I mean, I know Amendment 1 is under constant attack. Same with Amendment 4. A lot of but like the biggest one for me. And the
federal government, they look at the federal government and they'd be like, "Whoa,
but the biggest
isn't what."
But the biggest,
is not what we wanted.
The biggest one though is the Second Amendment, and you look at all these other countries who gave up the Second Amendment or whatever it was for them when they gave up guns, and you look what those countries turn into. At least we still do have that, you know. And I think if our founding fathers were to look at us right now and in the lens that we see, that would be a victory, kind of. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't be the biggest victory, but it would be a slight victory. Just the fact that we still are armed as citizens.
Absolutely.
Well, that would be one small thing, but overall, I think they would just be like, "What did you guys do? This is exactly what we warned you about."
But Dan, like it literally started not even like 25 years after it was instated with John versus Marbury in 1803, like you described. A lot of those people were still alive, man. So they saw the onslaught of the Constitution briefly after they installed it. So I mean, it's not like a big surprise that they saw that this was what the future was going to be. If one guy had the power to change how the court system is ran and that judges had this discretion on how they interpret law, they had their chance right then and there, not even 25 years later, to change something about it. And like you said, Thomas Jefferson on his deathbed said, "Oh, I wish I would have stomped him out of court." Like, dude, they had their opportunity. They saw the corruption not even 25 years after it was established.
Right.
So I disagree, and I think that they saw this coming.
Yeah. But the thing was that held them back. These were guys who were not just willing to fight and die for what they believed in. These were not just guys who were intellectually sound and people who were exploring the world and trying to learn as much as they could. These were also guys who were very, very conscious of the influence that they had. And their concern, this was one of the things that what held Thomas Jefferson back, was he was concerned that his efforts to bring John Marshall back into line would unduly influence the course of the country. He did not at the time that was going on understand the full implications of what John Marshall had done or how badly that was going to affect the future of the country. But he was more concerned about the fact that he, as president, stepping in and having a direct confrontation with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court could badly damage the structure of the government and overstep those places to keep the power separated. Does that make sense? Because there is something about a separation of powers.
But you have Thomas Jefferson, who's
What was that going to cause, like a civil war or something that
right. I mean,
you're talking about? Like that would have been like law breaks down and then it's a free for all and then there needs to be complete restructure of the government was what really made him
more that he was worried that by doing that he would then just like John Marshall was pulling all this power into the Supreme Court, into the Chief Justice position. Thomas Jefferson was concerned that someone might take his actions by stepping in and telling the Supreme Court that they couldn't do something, that they would then after that go, okay, well, Thomas Jefferson did this, so now I can be a dictator, and I don't really have to listen to the Supreme Court, and I don't really have to listen to Congress. You see,
so within
concerned.
So within the Constitution, what should have been done whenever that was when that was happening, when John Marshall was doing what he was doing, what steps within the Constitution should have been taken?
Well, what should have happened was Thomas Jefferson should have gone to Congress and they should have said something to him about no. This isn't, but it was the whole thing was such a surprise because this was, like I said, this was a minor case. This was something very minor. Marbury versus Madison was a situation where Marbury had been appointed to a post by John Adams on leaving out of office. John Adams had signed this thing and said, "Okay, Marbury, you get this post. I'm appointing you to this post." Well, when Madison came in, he was one of the I think he was Secretary of State under Thomas Jefferson. When he came in, he said, "Yeah, I'm not giving you that. We're going to put somebody else in there. John Adams is not president anymore, and we're not going to recognize that appointment that he did. We're going to put somebody else in there." Well, Marbury got mad because he was counting on getting paid for that and being in that position and and all the whatever that went with it. So he sued. And the appropriate place for him to sue at that time was in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court handles all of that stuff that's within the federal government like that. Well, this was a minor thing. All the Supreme Court had to do was look at it and go, well, let's see. John Adams appointed this guy, but the appointment didn't come through. He did it on his way out the door. So technically, Marbury, this is, he sort of really didn't do it. But they could have said, whenever, Marbury, you get it. That's all it had to be. That's all it was. That was the whole case. And John Marshall took and made it into this mountain of a thing and into this constitutional issue. He just puffed it up into nothing into something out of nothing in order to expand his power and the power of the court. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that get to the point that you were?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, explaining it in its entirety. Yes. So has it been questioned throughout the years, though? Have there been any people who have tried to take this down or change the verdict or change the ruling like they did with abortion recently?
The problem wasn't the ruling, is what he's getting. It doesn't matter what the ruling was. The thing was that case was like a catalyst for John Marshall to take power and to say, hey, we as judges get to interpret and
That's
get
what I'm
to
saying.
make the decisions and
they,
get the power.
And
there was no ruling there that allowed them to do that. That there was no overturning a case. It doesn't matter, innocent, guilty, this should have been the subject,
No,
or this should have been that.
I understand that, but it granted rights to however many over 100 years. You know what I'm saying? It's granted.
It didn't even grant rights to them, though. It just set a precedent.
Exactly.
Of them
That's what I'm saying, and they've done that for over 150 years now, or however long it is. What I'm saying is, has anyone challenged that within the past 30, 40, 50 years?
I don't know that there's ever been a legitimate challenge to it, because everybody's been running around like the emperor's new clothes and going, "Oh, this is so great. Oh, this is definitely great. This was genius." It's like, no, it wasn't. This was idiotic. This was a raw power grab by someone who is either too lazy and ignorant to read the Constitution and understand how it worked, or he was malicious and treasonous and he did it on purpose. In either case, John Marshall was just he needs to be held up as just an absolute POS. That's it.
So do you have any faith in bringing any type of justice to this situation? Whether or not you can talk about it, Dan, what it is that you're doing, do you have any faith that with presenting an argument towards Marbury versus Madison, that it would be taken seriously and that there would actually be something done about it to reverse it or whatever it is or challenge it?
I think there is some possibility to be able to bring that, because in the end, anybody who takes the time to look into it with any kind of sincerity will find that there is no support for judicial review. It's a foreign concept that was brought in from England, because John Marshall was educated in law at William and Mary. Okay, now we know this today. When you look at our colleges today, colleges take very simple subjects and they make them extraordinarily complicated so that they can charge people to take classes on them. And this is what William and Mary did with the Constitution. That's where John Marshall learned about law and the Constitution and everything, was at William and Mary, because they, in their ignorance, turned this whole constitutional thing into something that it wasn't. Okay, and so he came out of there with this idea that constitutional law was somehow based in English common law. And you can find things that are related. Okay, but that doesn't mean that's the foundation of it.
Where is William and Mary? He studied abroad?
No, it's in Virginia.
Okay.
It's up in Virginia.
But okay. Never mind.
And so the thing with English common law that everybody is always, this is another one of those things where people play this Emperor's New Clothes. Are y'all familiar with that story? The Emperor's New Clothes?
Emperor's New Groove?
No, that's the
Disney movie.
No, then I'm not.
Now, Emperor's New Clothes is this fairy tale that they tell about. There was this king who was very vain, and he wanted all the finest stuff. Well, there was these two guys who were swindlers who said, you know what, we got an idea for this king. We'll come in and we'll pose as tailors, and we'll say we're going to make him the finest clothes in the world. And so they did all this stuff to build up their reputations and everything. And finally, the king called them, and they went and made him this set of clothes. The only thing is that he told them, the guys who made the clothes for him, they told the king that these clothes could only be seen by truly intellectual people, truly whatever. There was something
divine,
some positive thing about these people. Only those kind of people could see the clothes, right? And so the emperor puts these clothes on, and he's absolutely naked because they haven't really made anything for him, and he's too egotistical and arrogant to admit that there's nothing there. So he parades around everywhere, wearing these new clothes, and all these nobles, none of them wants to appear to be ignorant, so they all praise him about these new clothes that no one can see. And then finally this kid comes up and goes, "What's everybody looking at? He's naked."
Well,
that's sort of
the parable, they were
Emperor's New
stealing
Clothes.
gold from him because it took gold to weave the clothing, right? I'm sorry, I had to leave for a second.
Yeah.
But no,
I think that's part of it too.
Have you guys never heard that before?
I haven't.
Materials and stuff.
Yeah.
All these fine materials and gold and everything, all these special things that they needed, he gave them everything. But the Emperor's New Clothes is like this idea that people buy into this idea, not because there's any merit to it, but because of who it is that's pushing it. And with English common law, if you look into English common law, it is tyrannical, it's corrupt, it's autocratic, it's just English common law. There's things that have happened. There was a deal that the English kings made. The English king made with the Magna Carta. this deal that he made with the nobles. They were pissed off at him. He was doing some stuff, and all of them got together and said, you know what, we've had enough of you, King. You know, we've decided we're going to kick your ass. And he goes, okay, wait, hold on, guys, listen, I've been a dick, and so let me just kind of calm things down. So I'll tell you what, from now on, if there's anything at all that's going on, your house, your castle is, your home is your castle, basically. I don't have the authority to come into your castle unless there's some warranted reason, right? And people say, well, that's our Fourth Amendment. It is and it isn't. Yeah, because shortly after the king did all this stuff, and that's where, the Magna Carta is where they were talking about trial by jury or excuse me, jury trial. The king maintained the power to appoint judges. And when the power to appoint the judges, basically all the deal that he made was just garbage. He lied to them, turned the tables, and at every point along the way, he was able to use judicial review, case law, precedent, and get the judges to change the laws around and make it seem as if something was legal when it wasn't. Over there in England, they had advisors and everything, and they had a parliamentary system. But basically, the king used Parliament just sort of as an advisory thing. Well, Parliament, as an elected body, got up and started like trying to assert some authority and some power, and the king rebelled against that. And they had this nice little revolution. But in order to be able to keep his power, he finally conceded that they could write laws. You guys can go ahead and do that. But he maintained control of the courts. And with judges able to sit there and say what is and is not the law, suddenly Parliament, basically all of their power was gone. So English common law is not the great thing that everybody says it is. It's shiny and nice on the surface, but when you dig into it, it's a corrupt authoritarian system. That's what they imported here.
I didn't want to bring that off track, but I just wanted to talk about it before I forgot about it. So many people, whenever Queen Elizabeth died, were like, oh, Queen Elizabeth died and all this over here. And I'm like, you are sad right now? I'm like, so many people like, oh, Queen Elizabeth died. Oh, this big. I'm like, good.
Right.
Fuck all of them.
Yes.
Like, did you not know where you came from? Like, I don't know. Man,
I think for me,
so
like,
many, where I live, there was so many people that I don't know if it was just like this media, like what the media was putting out there about like Queen Elizabeth, and everybody was like, oh, so sad, Queen Elizabeth. You talking about those dictators over there, the monarchy that was such a terrible thing for fucking so long that we worked so hard to get away from. You're sad about some of those fuckers? Like,
well, I think that's part of the problem is what you just said with the whole, the media is like everybody. Yeah, nobody around here give the shit about the Queen. Nobody was following Queen Elizabeth. Nobody cared at all. But since it's all over TV, you got to be a part of it. It's the in thing to talk about. It's similar to the whole Emperor's New Clothes thing. If you don't talk about it, if you don't see the clothes, if you don't act like them, then that you see them, then you're the ignorant one. You're not the little kid who's just like, hey, this is obviously like this dude's just naked. Like what's
right.
and the crazy.
And they're talking about Prince Charles, and I'm like, no, that piece of shit. I'm like, oh, so this piece of shit too? Why do you care? Like, oh man, it was so frustrating. Good. Kill all of them. Kill all of them. All of them die. Good. End it all. There's the fact that they're still trailing on to this monarchy bullshit over there, which they're still hanging on by a thread somehow, because the inheritance tax, they didn't have to do that over there to maintain the wealth of the royal family. And I'm like, no, fuck all that. You try to do some shit like that over here, well, it'd probably work over here because everybody's so fucking stupid too. But I mean, like, you try to put that shit on me, I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. Similar shit happens too but man, you talk about like frustrations. Like, anyway, I'm
getting
sorry.
back
I know that I went off track, but while I was up there,
while
I was up there, that whole Queen Elizabeth, good. Hope he dies too. Yeah. Fuck your monarchy. Like, fuck your monarchy. Know where you came from as an American. Like, that was the whole thing, right? Like, fuck the monarchy, right?
Right.
What do you? Oh, Queen Elizabeth died over here, and everybody's posting shit. Like,
Right.
what the fuck? No,
She
Oh
did
my
so
God,
much.
Where did
She
you
did so
come-
much.
Oh,
That's what
no.
people say.
Oh my God.
Just go through and read the Declaration of Independence sometime, and you'd be amazed at what a piece of shit that king was.
Yeah.
I mean, and these guys, this is like no small deal. You know, we talk about the the Revolutionary War and everything like that. Those guys, no joke, put their life and their fortunes on the line.
Yeah, because they would have lost
had-
the war. Oh my God, if they would have lost the war.
Yeah, if they would have lost the war, and the thing was, is that there was a lot of people during the war who were captured and taken and put in prison over in England. They were shipped across the ocean over to England and never returned to America. There were people whose houses and farms got burned down. The British came through and targeted them specifically, burned down their houses, shot their families, and this was what was going on was severe enough that people were willing to accept that risk.
Yeah.
To go against the most powerful country in the world at the time.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
So-
like you get sad about Queen Elizabeth fucking dying. You should lose your fucking citizenship as an American almost. If you like, oh, Queen Elizabeth, no, I'm like, you know you're an American, right? Like, do you not know? Like, do you not know where all this came from and where you are now? I don't know. And there's plenty of people over in England that protested. What is the shit of Prince Charles coming in, talking about where they hate the monarchy,
like the
It's
inauguration.
King Charles
Yeah.
now, isn't it?
What? Who fucking
Yeah,
cares?
King Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's plenty of people over there too that realize the corrupt nature of all that entire fucking scenario. But man,
I want to talk real quick about.
anyway, sorry, that was my little tangent that frustrated me.
Oh well, shit. I
Very,
need to
very
kind of.
much.
I gotta wait for Paul because this involves him as well. No, because it. But I get.
He can't fucking hear
I can
you
hear
from
you.
there.
I'm gonna run outside. Yeah, that's not how that works, Paul. I'll wait for Paul to get back about it. But it basically. It's talking about your whole, like you just talked, oh, they were willing to take those risks. They were willing to do these things. And it brings me back to what you said about in the first place about, oh, is there nobody talking about this? Is there nobody talking about Marbury versus Madison and John Marshall and all these things? And I hate to say this, and this is getting not dark, but real negative, real pessimistic about that. And I apologize, but it's how it is. I feel like a lot of it, and nobody wants to accept any blame, but I feel like a lot of it is our fault as well for being so incredibly apathetic. Like we just don't care. And unfortunately, we're brainwashed into that because our education system is like a for-profit thing, like you talked about earlier, Dan, with schools making money off of people to go to classes and stuff. They don't actually want to teach you to care about the correct thing. But I mean, and not to call you guys out because I'm guilty of it too. We all are. Dan's guilty of it. But like, Dan's been on the podcast several times now and brought it all the way back up on the first one. I'd be willing to bet because the only reason I read it is because I didn't have any video games to play, wasn't chasing any girls at the time, wasn't at work, and I wasn't jerking off. So I was like, fuck it, I'll go ahead and read it. But y'all probably haven't read the Constitution yet since he brought it up. Realistically,
Read a little bit, but not.
But
still, yeah.
that's my point, though. We're all so apathetic. We don't care. As people, as humans, we don't care because we're living in our own little worlds. We have our stuff that we're dealing with. We're dealing with our kids. We're dealing with the next big thing that's entertaining, the next thing that gives us that hit of serotonin or whatever, or, oh, I'm going to the bar today to hang out with my friends, or I'm doing this or that or whatever. And people don't like to hear that. People don't like to take the blame for themselves, myself included. Very true. But that's the truth. We're so apathetic.
But we all still rely on the Constitution to protect us.
But we won't defend
But look
it.
at how watered
Dan
down
talks
he's
about you
talking
just
about us
I know.
not
you
caring
didn't
enough to
read
where
it. You didn't read it. You didn't read it. The only reason I read it is because I wasn't jerking off at the time, is what I'm getting at. Like, we don't care. That's the sad fucking truth. And the only way you can get people to care, and I'm just talking generally, Dan, I'm not saying everybody, but like in general, we're not even taught to care, though. The schools don't teach you it. They don't teach you how important that actually is for your society. They say go out and vote, but they don't talk about like your rights. They don't talk about how much this truly affects you as a human being and as a member of society, not even just government, but as a member of society, of the human, whatever, the human species in general, we're also wrapped up in our own little worlds. We don't care about the betterment of other people or the betterment of our government or how we're all living.
Yeah, that was all by design.
No, it is by design. I agree 100% it's by design. Like I said, we're brainwashed. We're brainwashed into it through negligence of them not wanting us to learn. And it bothers me. And like I said, there's no solution. I don't have a solution. I realize that I'm going down like a negative, whatever, a vortex or a hole here, a whirlpool that you're getting sucked into, and there's no answer. But it's like all these things that we want to fix and we want to talk about, it's like people don't care. We're so apathetic towards all of it. We can talk about it on the podcast right now, but we still don't read the Constitution. We still don't give a shit.
I would be curious
in our everyday life until we're talking about it on a Sunday.
I would be curious whenever the Supreme Court came out with this new abortion, just recently with the new verdict or whatever, when they switched it on the Google related searches for the Constitution. I'd be curious on what that was.
No, for sure. And I'm sure that helped.
There are trigger points that would stray society towards that. I know exactly what you're saying.
What I'm saying,
I
right?
I completely integrate that's all by design. 100%. We've been down this road. We've talked about it. But I think, Dan, like with what you're talking about, and I don't know what it is you got in the books and shit like that, man. When you bring something like this up, and if it is ruled on on a Supreme Court level, that's another thing that could shift the minds of the people to be more interested in the Constitution and know what it's about. And these types of conversations too, man. I know that like not a lot of people listen to it, but again, TikTok, there are people who are watching. There's thousands of people that are interested in the Constitution. There are ways around it. And I think that that's what we have to fight for. We have to keep fighting and fighting and fighting and get back to those core values. I don't support those values like you describe. I'm in my own little world. But we
all are. I'm not blaming it.
Yeah, I know.
I wasn't trying to call you guys out. I'm just making an example.
Dude, I know that. I damn well know that, man. But it's not something that I wouldn't be.
It's the sad dystopian shit that you're bringing up, which is probably true because you're talking about the mass of people that actually cohere to what you're talking about of just
consumerism is.
Oh, I'm happy with my day-to-day shit. So why would I ever worry about the Constitution being upheld? And
but I'm not like. Are you not like? Would you not be okay with? I mean, I don't know what kind of world it would be like if everyone knew what the Constitution was and knew everything about it.
Well-educated people?
Yeah, well-educated.
Like
yes,
well-educated people.
Yes, it would be interesting to see what type of world that would be.
I think it would be a better world.
Well, the real key to this whole thing, it is true. I don't think it's so much that people are apathetic. I think it's that people are overwhelmed.
Because we're for
taught,
sure.
Yeah, we're taught that there's really nothing you can do about it. It's it's gone too far. It's like what am I supposed to do? And I like what it is that Jordan Peterson says about it. It's like the pathway. The stop trying to be happy. Stop trying to set happiness as a goal, and instead take on responsibilities. Just look around you and find the heaviest burden that you can pick up and carry, and take that on for a while and see where it gets you. And responsibility is something that invigorates you, because those other things are just, they're just the work day. What is it you're working for? What is it you're going to work for? Because if it's just to pay the bills, that is a miserable existence, right? When we start taking on these responsibilities, and that's I think the problem that we've gotten ourselves into. This is not something that we created. We didn't physically create the situation that we're in, but it's been something that has slowly happened over time. Our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents all played a part in this, and it's just been a slow grind to get us to the point where our kids, we were not educated by our parents, right? Except to a small degree, right? Most of our education came from the school system, and the school system put us into conflict, most of us into conflict with our parents, right? Wow. Our parents were old, they're stupid, they don't know anything. Can you help me with my homework? No, you can't. Oh geez, my teacher must be a whole lot smarter than my parents are, so I'll just listen to my teacher, right? Well, the thing is that where do you get your values and everything? Where does all that stuff get instilled from? It's from your parents, right? Even if, and I'm not saying that all parents are good, I'm just simply saying these are the people that have the main influence on you, good or bad. They're the ones that have the main influence on you. They're the ones who usually have the most influence over the values that you're going to take forward and dictate how it is that you're going to, the direction that you're going to go in your life, right? And that has been something that has been severed and eroded. And instead we have these people. God, I hope you guys don't check too much into what's going on in the public school systems now, because
It's
you know,
awful.
oh yeah,
The universities are even worse, and I've heard it's been that way for a long time.
It only gets
yeah. And the thing is that you know, each one of us can stop and say, you know what, it's too much. I'm just gonna, you know, I just need to just go to work and do my best I can in this small little area that I you know, that I have in front of me, and just keep my head down. But you know, at some point, each one of us is going to have to stop and go, okay, I'm going to have to see if I can't pick up a bigger burden, because, you know, making sure that I cut my grass every Saturday is just, it's just not that big a deal. I really don't care whether my neighbor likes my lawn or not, you know.
But I will say, and I'm only going to briefly
that hit home.
Yeah.
No, the teacher one fucking hit home with me. That's crazy. You never that's a weird, like, I felt that, like, me being like 13 years old.
Oh yeah, but they're like,
Feeling
your
that.
parents can't help you with your homework because they don't fucking know, because they're idiots.
And I'm listening to my teachers. My teachers are now the people I look up to, not so much my parents.
But I will say, the whole bringing on a bigger, and I'm digressing a little bit here, and I'll keep it short because I want to stay on topic. But a big part of that, the whole, you talk about, hey, we need to bring on bigger burdens. We need to be more responsible. We need to focus on these things. Once again, going down a different path here. But a lot of that, like you said, is by design. They keep you down. They keep people in this rat race, in this. I mean, Jesse, your kid, I'm assuming, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest thing that's ever happened to you.
Absolutely.
You talk about...
But that's a sense of responsibility that I've
know.
never had before in my life, and then all of a sudden I'm fueled after that.
You are, but...
And I'm more focused,
But-
and I change the way that I do shit.
Okay.
And I'm
But-
worried about the future now, of myself all of a sudden, too, because I never gave a fuck about my future up until I had him.
But you're worried for him,
and I'm
because that's your
responsible for him.
responsibility.
So now I'm worried about my future now.
But hear me out here. Hear me out. You're worried about your future, and you're worried about him because he's your responsibility.
Yes.
And now you're a responsible person. That's something you want to take on. But society as a whole, or our government, or the American way, or capitalism, or any of it, keeps you down in the sense of, you're not going to go read the Constitution and worry about that kind of stuff because you are focused on your child, because you're focused on yourself, and because you don't have the time. Because
There's always time. There's always time.
You have to go to work. You have to do these things to support your kid.
No, I'll find.
I know what
I'll
you're
find
talking
time.
about, Johnny.
And I know what you mean too.
Well, that's why I said I'm not trying to go off of this, but they keep you like... You talk about you want to take on other burdens, but you can only take on so much before it gets to a point of
They've mentally checked out our brains to where we don't want to take on more burdens.
And also, I feel like I need to turn myself down on this, because every time I'm talking on there, it seems really like...
No, you're good.
That's
man.
yeah,
It's all good.
but whatever.
Yeah, no, you're good. The biggest change for me, and I read, and honestly, this is a Jordan Peterson thing. He talked about male responsibility, how important males and responsibility are. You are lost as a male until you're responsible for something other than yourself. Because I don't give a fuck about myself. If it's just me, I don't give a shit. I'll watch myself burn. I'll do all this shit. I'll be lost. I'll fuck around. I'll do drugs. Fucking drink too much. Up until you give me something to care about, and it's my responsibility. Now shit changes.
How does it change, Jesse? How does it change? I'm just curious.
I'm
just curious.
It just does.
And it's the same for me. It's like
when
we have like
everything changed. It's
but
now it's a sense of,
like, in my eyes though, like the change that
it's got to be beyond me, because I'm too down for some odd reason. I know this. I don't want to sound like I'm depressed or anything like that, but it's like I don't care so much about me. Like, who cares about, like, I don't care enough about me, but you give me something I love to truly protect that's my own, and then there's a fire. And then I've already talked about...
But where does that fire lead to,
how much,
though? Where does that lead to? Because
I'm gonna make a better future. I'm gonna be better than my dad. This is my first goal, to be better than my dad. And I had a great dad. To be better than my dad to him. And just I don't know, man. That's where it starts, and then now some shit changes.
But so I'm just curious. I'm just curious though.
And there's probably other things that play into it too. But there is this massive fucking switch to where it's no longer just about me.
I get that, but I think whenever you think about life, it's in its entirety, but specifically geared towards the podcast when it comes to responsibility and taking on burdens. Having kids does change. It changed my life. It completely changed my life. But it's one of those things, and I don't want to discredit having kids, but eventually you get comfortable with having kids. I have 3. You get in a rhythm, you get in a routine, you have that routine, you're doing the same shit every single day. You're not taking on any burdens. You're not really changing much else. We're still faced with the same problems, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Within having this podcast every single week, and we have Dan on, and we talk about the Constitution, and we talk and when we talk about I've never taken on any other burdens other than the fact that I pay the bills, like you described. That's the only burden I do, and I'm not.
Those are so small.
I'm not. But hold on, I'm not short selling myself that I provide for my family and my kids and a roof over their head and clothes on their back and food on the table. I'm not discrediting not saying that that's not a burden that I'm taking on. I would willfully do that for my kids until the day that I die. But within what the past 4 years of what this podcast has been about is the corruption that lives, this festering scab that lives within religion, government, everything that's presented to us in the United States, and we don't take on any burdens. Institutions, corporations. We don't take any.
That's another thing that I wanted to it's not that I don't care about everybody else. Like, oh man, fuck everybody else up until I had my kid. My kid's the only thing that's important to me. That's not it. I obviously cared about other people too, but it's a different fire that sets off into you whenever you're directly responsible for it. Like, this lives and dies based upon how I live my day-to-day life now. Mm-hmm. And it changes, honestly, everything from then on out. And it's honestly even made me more aware and caring of other people too, of that scenario. It's that responsibility of like this lives and dies by me. So I'm going to work really hard. And now I have a better wisdom and understanding of it. And I'm going to do my best for other shit too on top of it, if that makes any sense. I'm only 4 months in, so I'm working on it still. But I felt that fire.
Yeah, the fire doesn't go away, man.
But that fire is, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all. Do not take this the wrong way.
I don't want to sound like a piece of shit. Like you have to have kids to realize your place in the world and stuff like that. But I feel like it's difficult for males. It's really specifically difficult for males to find your place in the world without having something that you're responsible for. Right. I don't know.
That's great.
That thing that I said about, if you're under 30, you're not a man. If you're a male and you're under 30, you're not a man. And that's not a dig on anybody that's under 30, but it's just the simple fact that until you reach about the age of 30, you're not even approaching something that, no offense to any of you guys, but
none taken. I'm almost 32.
Well, I mean, but as far as like marriage, right? Guys that are under 30, when I was that age, and I see it with guys across the board, being under 30 and being married, man, that you're sitting there going, what the fuck did I do? I mean, because it's we're not structured that way. That period of time when you're not a man is for you to build yourself into a man, to become that thing. And having that burden of a woman and a responsibility of a family is just not appropriate at that time, because you need to build yourself, because later on you're going to be having that, and you have to have all that structure to fall back on to be able to be the leader and to be able to be the foundation and the rock for the family. And we've had this push to destroy the family and make it into something other than what it is. I mean, realistically, I want you to listen to this stuff, and I think you'll find that just how hard the propaganda has been against this. Okay, so if you're under 30, you're not a man, right? No man should.
Beyonce said the same thing too, right?
Who?
Beyonce said the same thing. No guy's worth shit under the age of 30. Beyonce literally said the same thing. Anyway, sorry.
She's been listening to my stuff.
Yeah.
And a man should not marry a woman that is not at least half his age. Right?
Okay. That should add up.
Your age, right? And the reason for that, now just think about the prejudices that we have about that. But if you look back through history, that's basically the way that it's always been done. And why is that? Because it takes that long for a man to actually become a man, to become emotionally stable, to become something that is reliable, to become something that is responsible, to become something that has the skills to be able to navigate the difficulties that come up. Because what happens to us when we're in that area where we're not men? You lose your job. Okay? How many guys do you know that are under 30 that sit on the couch for 2 weeks and play video games and don't do anything? Don't bother looking for a job, whatever their situation is, right?
Sadly, I know more people over 30 doing that, but
a man who loses a job goes, all right, I'll just go get another job, because he's confident and he knows that, he's got certain responsibilities he's got to meet, and it's not a burden. It's just, this is what I've decided to do. I've decided that these responsibilities are important. And so, I'm just going to go and get another job. He goes in and he says, I want a job. They go, okay, you're hired. It's not like with younger males where they're like, I'm taking a risk on this guy. This is somebody who comes in and says, you know what, whatever it is you got to do, I can do it. That's why I came here. They're like, okay, you're hired. Does that make sense?
Don't you think that might be a product of environment? I completely agree with what you're saying, in that I don't think that I was mentally a man, and I'm not saying that I'm a man now, but like until you're 30, is it more or less a product of environment? When you talk about like the 16, 17, 1800s, even 1900s early, where technology wasn't what it is now, and you were forced. There was no question about it. That's something you had to go through mentally, is what it is to be a man. Because, and again, I'm bringing technology into the aspect and what technology is and how it's changed the landscape of what it is, or how we adapt, I guess. But like whenever, like in the 17, 18, 1900s, early 1900s, you had to go through it. You know what I'm saying? Every single man that was born on this earth had to go through that process. And within this landscape, or within this, let's call it a statistic, or let's call it a study, I just want to throw this out there real quick. I'm sure that there are men out there that progress quicker than others, and some who don't. And so, you know what I'm saying? There are some.
30 is just a generalization.
Exactly.
It could be 36 for someone else, and
exactly.
it could be 24 or 25 for someone else.
I just wanted to throw that out there. That way I don't piss everyone off. You know what I'm saying? Within the landscape of the conversation.
The thing that's important.
But hold on, Dan. Sorry.
Remember about this is that it's almost a universal constant. Because if you look in the Constitution, see, I got back on the Constitution. If you look in the Constitution, 25 years old is the minimum age to become a representative in Congress, right? So there's already a recognition on their part that there is something that comes with age, and that until you reach the age of 25, you're not, they didn't put any other qualifications on it. It was the age of 25. You're not qualified to become a representative in Congress. They just made it that number.
That seems a little low for me, too.
What is it for the president? 33? 32? 33?
35, yeah.
Oh, 35?
Yeah.
But I mean, like you have to understand, like with age, like whenever you're 18, and I know that that's the age to vote, but like that, you're still a teenager at that point, and even coming out of that stage. And again, I completely agree with you, Dan, because in Western society today, what they perpetuate is, hey, go to college, join a fraternity, have fun, party, have sex, do all these things, which sounds fun and sounds cool and all, and I would love to do those things.
It's a blast.
It is a blast, and that's, I mean, who knows what the true meaning of life is, and that should be like, as an American,
find the emptiness in that too.
Yeah, no,
that there's just
no, I
because there's no responsibility there.
But that's
what you find out as a male. There's no responsibility. But that's all that shit.
That's what
it's fun.
What I'm saying is Western civilization is trying to kill what it is to be a man.
Yes.
That's
for
legitimately
sure.
what they're trying to do
For
because
sure.
you're literally wasting away what it is to be your 20s and you're not gaining any wisdom or knowledge. Luckily, having a child did that for me. I had to step away from what it was that I was doing in my 20s, my whole entirety of my 20s. So 7 years is when I had my first kid into my 20s. And at that point, I did wake up and I had to adjust. It was hard at first for a very long time, a year or two, maybe even longer. I'm still adjusting. I'm not, I'm still growing with my wisdom. I don't even know if I'm a man yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, just it's a crazy point. It truly is. When are you even really truly a man? That's crazy.
Because there's not an age when you become a man. A man is something that you build within yourself, and it's something that you will know. You will know when you're a man. People that you believe are men will just accept it. You'll know that you've been accepted as a man. But it's something that's built. Women do not build. Women just become women, right? They just one day wake up, they start menstruating, and that's it. They're a woman. They get every bit of power that comes along with being a woman. None of the wisdom that comes with maturity or anything like that, but every bit of power that comes along with that is given to them at one time. And what we've done is we've made it so that women get to extend and continue to without any instruction. They just go off and start becoming women, and they use the powers that go with that, to an extreme and irresponsibly, and we don't have any consequences for that. And on the flip side, we try and keep men as children for as long as possible, and do everything that we can to shame the attempts to become responsible. Like going to college. There is no reason for 90% of the people that are in college to be there. There is absolutely.
It's true.
Oh my God.
That's true.
Man, that one hurts.
Dude.
I agree, though.
Yeah.
Fuck, I agree.
I mean,
I know.
But that's the thing, is that they want people to go there so that they can extend their childhood. It's not. It's a purposeful thing. You can go and be irresponsible, come out of college with $150,000 in debt, and they're happy as hell that you did it. But you haven't gained much of anything. You may have gained a degree, but even when I was in high school, I was looking at the information and the statistics on this. At that time, there was already a trend where a lot of people who would get degrees were not being employed in the field that they'd studied in. So their degree was basically a waste of time. I think people were coming out with not, and I don't mean like a women's studies degree or something like that. They were coming out with real degrees and were unable to find jobs in their degree field.
I think on a realistic level, what a college level is supposed to be is exposing an individual to a bunch of different avenues for career paths for them to figure out what works best for them. And it's almost like a soul searching kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No, really, because when you go into college, I mean, you can take general education, but a lot of people have to pick what it is that they want to learn, like right off the bat.
Yep.
No, I mean you can change. Change stuff.
and
For sure you
changes,
can, but
everybody, well, for the majority, everybody changes their shit.
But could you
The whole
imagine being
purpose
18
of
saying, "Hey,
college-
I want to be a doctor. Well, I'm going to go to med school." Like, who knows that they want to do that at 18? Granted, we need doctors. I know we need them, but I'm just throwing that out there.
That's a weird placement on that one. But for the most part, college is supposed to be exposure to a bunch of different avenues and find what you're interested in and find your niche to be, oh, man, I'm actually really interested in, paleontology. I want to dig up bones, and then you discover that through that. But it's now turned into like something else. As to where now you need to go to college.
It's a liberal movement, man, is what college is. University, especially Division I.
I need to spend $200,000 to have a piece of paper for me to be an accountant for Hallmark out in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. But I really liked paleontology, though. But I'll never be a paleontologist.
Right.
And then you give up on those dreams. Weird thing.
I think so. I guess my biggest
challenge.
question, Dan, is with the onset of technology, is it almost inherent, or is it part of evolution of what it is to be human, that maybe men don't have to become a man in their 20s or even in their 30s? Because I guarantee you, man, if you go back down to the prehistoric age, like you had to become a man real quick if you wanted to survive an environment with predators in your face all day, every day. But we've adapted into a situation where you don't really have to become a man basically at any given time. Now, I know
We've all been soft.
yeah, and look what this has created. It's created the movie WALL-E, and that's what it's going to turn into. Is that what we want type of thing? And if that's what we want, then this is the evolution of man is WALL-E. That's the evolution of humans is WALL-E.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, that's where we'll be eventually anyways.
No, I got to
We're
bring
going to
this.
be in the metaverse, Ready Player One world. Everything's just given and fed to you.
I just don't believe that the evolution of human beings is WALL-E. I can't do that, man.
Well,
I can't.
I got to bring this up before it all ends, because so many times, like, males just get, like, you get the brunt end of it. Like, yes, you were the front of it, you handle it, and you got to be a man and handle it. And there's a lot of mental health there involved. Men don't talk enough amongst each other as far as like what they're going through, and because I literally, okay, so this is my best example of this. Did you, Dan, did you watch the Jeffrey Dahmer TV show that came out on Netflix that was like the adaptation of it? Really good, interesting. Jeffrey Dahmer is a really interesting individual. really good shit there. And I remember talking about watching, I was at my barber, I was getting my hair cut, and I was talking about watching the show about Jeffrey Dahmer, and the guy across from me was getting his haircut too. And he was like, yeah, I watched the same thing, man. And he was like, man, I would have cared way more if he would have been killing women. Like, who gives a fuck about guys? Like, Jeffrey Dahmer was just killing other dudes. So, like, why would I care? And it really resonated with me that people don't care what happens to other guys at all. And it's not like we don't need some place to fucking vent to. But that was like so much like, fuck, man. Even guys don't give a shit. Like, we need to be able to talk about our struggles too. And it's not like we don't have, yes, we take the brunt of responsibility, and we're just supposed to package it up, be this fucking man, sleep it off, whatever, drink it off, whatever it fucking takes. A lot of guys fucking drink it off. And then you go to the next day, and you go to the fucking next day. Right? As to where we should be able to be more open and honest about how we feel and have, you know.
I agree with everything.
You're not a bitch. Like, I'll never say it. You're not a bitch guy whenever you come to me in fucking tears and you're like, man, I don't know what to do, but I have to keep doing it.
As long as
And
you
we
still
need-
men will
as long
always
as
be
you
that
still
way, though.
handle your shit.
I know.
Men will
But,
always be
man,
that way. They'll
you
never,
become-
ever change.
But guys can't cry, though. Guys can't fucking cry. I hate that fucking idea. We should be the first motherfuckers crying. We deal with more than anybody else fucking deals with. We take the brunt of shit more so than anybody else. Like, head of families and males and all this deal with more.
Other than having a child,
But man, I don't know. You got to be in certain scenarios. We deal with our shit too. We shouldn't have that outlet. You know what I mean? I hate the idea of thinking that this male's weak because, oh man, you just broke down. Shit's really hard for you right now. Like, you're in debt and you're just trying to make it work for your fucking family. But you look like girls can just have that outlet. This weird scenario. Man, guys should be able to have that outlet too. Like,
Well,
I'll leave it there.
Right. I don't know that that's something
left
that's
that
ever gonna happen. Because I mean, think about this: we were at war in Afghanistan, and there were casualties every single day, and nobody cared.
yeah.
There were people dying in Afghanistan, men dying in Afghanistan every single day. And
Nobody
every once
fucking
in a
cares
while,
about
you'd
guys.
Hear about some woman that something happened to some woman over there, and that was an instant reason to have some kind of sympathy or whatever, or some kind of bring the human toll back home or something, But I think one thing that's important with all of this stuff, as far as like becoming men and the evolution and everything, is the responsibility, because you had to, in times past, you had to take on responsibilities at an earlier age. Those things, and it wasn't necessarily, I mean, and certainly, and there were definitely times when it was forced on you, but it just became one of those things where once you were able, there was responsibilities, because you're able to take them on, they were given to you because there was so much to do. And unfortunately, we've gotten into a situation where we have been persuaded that there really isn't anything for us to do. We need to figure out some way to start working for retirement and and vacations and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Whatever happened to the idea that I'm working to build something better? I'm working to build something so that not just my children, but my grandchildren's grandchildren have something. What can I do to make that happen? And that's the kind of responsibility that Western men in particular have, that you don't find in other cultures. That's the big difference between America and less Western Europe, but still Western Europe, and the rest of the world, is that there is something in there, that's inherent in the philosophy and the idea of Western culture, where we're building something. We're constantly wanting to build something bigger and better, but not just so it's bigger and better, but that it has a purpose to live on. Right?
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, it does. Well, we're a little bit over the hour. We're like an hour and 10 minutes, man. So I know you got to be up at 4 a.m.
3:30, yeah.
Oh God,
Oof.
yeah. We'll get you off here, man. It was a great podcast, Dan. Next time we'll try and shoot for 7 for your sake. I'll let Johnny and Jesse know next time you come on. That way you can get an extra hour of sleep, man. But
That'd be cool. That's all right. Whichever way it works out is fine with me. I enjoy coming on here.
hell yeah, man.
It's always a good discussion. I like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a great podcast in general, man. We went from just some really good stuff into some even better stuff, in my opinion. Masculinity is a big topic right now. It's a good type of conversation. Like Jesse said, we don't really talk about it enough. And I think we should honestly probably have a podcast just strictly on that, just in itself, because I've never done it. It'd be fun. I'd be completely okay with that. But I don't know if you have any more lasting thoughts, my man. But if you do, right now is the time.
No, I think I'm thought out.
Yeah. And
Well,
that's how it should be at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
You should be, our guest should have that, man, fuck, we talked about a lot.
Yeah.
That's the exact
Worn
ending
out.
of a podcast, that you want.
Rock on, man. Well, I appreciate you joining as always. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'll send those documents over to Jesse and Johnny, and then next time maybe we shoot over that a little bit more in depth.
If you guys get a chance to read it, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Rock on, man.
All right. Well, gentlemen, y'all have a good night. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Dan. Have fun waking up at 3:30 or whatever. Fucking crazy bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
Rock on,
All
brother.
right.
Cheers.
Good night.
Appreciate you guys.
Later, Dan.
Appreciate you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dan from the Constitution of Us is originally where I found Dan on Facebook. It's a funny story. I used to try and find people on Facebook. I would search on. It looks like you're doing something to yourself over there, Jesse. Pocket pool. But that's how I found Dan. Was just searching through a message board or whatever. Found Dan. He came on the show, man. He's been on over probably 10 to 20 times now. I always love having the guy on. But hopefully you guys got something out of that podcast, man. There's a lot of good information. In my opinion, a lot of good conversation. Love having conversation with all three of you guys. Best thing you can do for this video is hit the like button, hit the share button. If you're on TikTok, whatever what it is you want to do a duet, all that good stuff, which you're not going to listen to this anyway, so I don't know why I'm even saying that. But to all our junkies out there,
Stay fly and ring the bell for as long as that stays relevant.
Always. There'll always be a bell to ring, bro.
Right?